Let's get our energy shaking up real quick. Every time that you shift, the clock goes back. The clock goes back. Every time that you shift, the clock goes back. Every time that you evolve, elevate, shift, the clock goes back. The clock goes back. You shed the layers that are the buildup as you assess the higher degrees that are of self. Don't believe me? This is clearly over the last couple of days, releasing, shedding, a lot of weight, a lot of shit's been shut off. Energy's been called back. We don't get into that tonight. Calling your energy back to you, understanding the negative aspects. But I really want to get deep into the degrees of pride, the state of pride. Oh shit! I mean hit that butt. Oh god! I mean do that. As I send this out to everybody, make sure we hit everybody up. But yeah, as we're going through our shifts, as you coming into that space, alignment, understanding what you're manifesting, building things into your space, the shift, going into your work, your shadow work, facing yourself, all of these things, it's going to force you to look at yourself in a way that you've never looked at yourself. It's going to force you to deal with yourself. But we don't get into that. We're going to let it fill up. The power of building what you're building, understanding the basis of what you're building, your foundation. So many factors go into your change and into your growth that we really don't look at it. I didn't look at it a lot. I didn't pay attention to it. I never allowed myself to really understand that the mentality that I have a lot of those times, I'm going to get it by any means. The I'm going to get it by any means mentality was toxic, was detrimental. The get it by any means mentality, detrimental to my healing. Walking in the aspects of my truth with myself, I know it was detrimental to a process. All of these things that were the degrees of detriment, they were keeping me from tapping into my higher self. Because one of the things that you're going to realize is like when you actually having these conversations with yourself and you're building this conversation, you're building this new bridge. You're building this bridge to the higher aspects of yourself to tap into your discernment, to really understand and tap into your lessons, to really move and evolve through your lessons and let go of a lot of things. You got to understand that a lot of the things that you built down here, remember, they based on good and bad. It's not based on good and bad. It's based on the positive and negative. I've talked about this before, that positive and negative. There's things that you've done that were in the most negative of sense, but they served you a purpose. And your pride is what makes your pride is what keeps you trying to rationalize what that is. We don't get into this. A lot of times your pride got you rationalizing, got you trying to rationalize the bullshit that you've done in your life so you don't have to take accountability for it. There's a lot of times when your pride has you stuck in taking in these judgments with yourself or saying these things about yourself or acting a certain way with yourself that you keep rationalizing a certain way that you keep living because it's by I'm gonna do this because I've always done it this way. I've always had to prove myself. That was my pride. That was my energy inside of that space. And you've been doing that over and over again, not understanding the dynamics or the degrees that connect you to that. And that's what we'll get into tonight as we let it fill up. A lot of information. Y'all, if you're first time in, go ahead to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the subscribe. At the end, towards the end, we're gonna have readings, donation-based readings, and the Q&A. So if you have a question during the class, during the lecture, get something down, get a piece of paper beside you, write it down, do it like your grandmother used to do it, your uncle used to do it. Grab a piece of paper, grab an envelope, write that shit down right there to the corner of it. So towards the question and answer, we can answer those questions. But we got to understand this process. One thing that I had to understand, one thing that I've come into that understanding with myself was understanding the power of nothingness. Understanding the power of what nothingness was. The video, The Path to Nothingness, is on the channel now. But understanding what nothingness truly was, and then that helped me understand most of the energetic definitions that I've laid out to create my space. And then when you're really doing your work and you start shedding these layers of yourself and you really start really doing this work. And what I mean by, I actually asked it a question earlier. Someone sent a question under one of the comments under one of the videos. And they were like, it was the PPP or the PD pattern loan shit. And they asked, they were like, so if sitting in your guilt, if you're used to sitting in your guilt as way of you trying to self-sabotage yourself, would that be the same? I said, no. I said, there's a difference. A lot of things that we've been taught are based on that the light answer of you got to sit inside of your guilt. But if you always sat at the table with your guilt, there's a difference between sitting at the table with your guilt and sitting in the seat of your guilt. That means sitting directly in that seat. There's a difference. There's a difference between sitting with your insecurities and sitting in the seat at the head of the table with your insecurities. There's a difference. And that difference is the offset of the pride, the state of pride that you stay in. That is the aspect that keeps you in the state of the detriment that you're in, that you keep trying to prove yourself or bring, because everything's down. You're not used to looking down, basically, in that state. You're not used to really looking at yourself. You're talking down to yourself. You're talking down to yourself. But you're not used to listening to it. You've been talked down to. You've been in this state of downtrodden. Your feelings have been hurt. But you haven't dealt with it. So you build this states of pride. When you go get when you went and got that first job, that was your first stunt of pride. Ooh, I got my own first job. I got my own job. And now this is one step closer to when my parents told me that when I'm 18, I got to get out the house. So this is one step closer to that. I got some pride. I got something to prove. So now you got your own job, as this example. Got your own job. Got your own first job. And now you're sitting there with you're building up this false pride for yourself. First paycheck. Now you can go to the mall. Now you was going to the mall to grab the kicks. Now you was going into the back around the era where I came up in. You was looking in the back of the East Bay magazine. You were looking at, I can order this now. I can do this now. You had that false sense of pride. And through that pride, defining what money was to you, your ability to do certain things, that became what made you created your own detriment. Because now you just defined, this is how simply you define some variables inside of your life. So now you simply defined yourself in that space, of that mindset. That's what you define money as. See, when we're not understanding how we originally identified things or define things inside of our life, we can't get out of that cycle. Remember last week I talked about those sequences. You can't get out of that sequence because you have not yet went back to how you learned that definition. Just like think about the value of your body. The value of your body. The value of your body when we talk about sexual trauma. The value of your body. You're still defining your body by that same value system of the trauma. And remember, there's multiple points. It just don't mean we're not just talking about, because remember, what happened in the current state is only the reaction to a state prior. Is when we start understanding, when we start scaling back and look at our energy. What happened to you in a current state, that's only the effect of something that happened prior. Something led to that. Something led you to that state. Something led you to that moment. And tonight we don't get into those spectrums, understanding those spectrums of thought, going into that spectrum of why certain things ain't coming up and why certain things keep happening inside of your life. Because a lot of times we're not really realizing that it's like a lot of the times shit is happening inside of your life and it keeps repeating itself because it's based on your thought process. And until you do the assessment of your thought process, that mentality that it's from lack, because you're only going to get things from two different spaces, lack or ownership. They're only, when we look at these two spectrums, these two axioms inside of your life, you're either going to get it based on lack, and lack is, I'm going to get it, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to get it I'm going to hustle, all of these aspects of lack. I'm going to do it because my parents didn't give it to me. I'm going to do it. That's all lack mentality. That's all the lack mentality. I'm going to do it because the world's against me. My back's against the wall. Lack mentality. That's that state of that pride. That's that lower states of pride. Because I didn't say pride was, see, you got to understand, pride is not a bad thing. You just have to transmute through the different states of pride. See, when you're stuck in the lower levels of yourself, those demons that you're not dealing with that are the lower aspects of pride, you can't take pride. Pride transmutes into confidence. Pride transmutes into the power of that alignment. Blessings, blessings. Pride transmutes into that confidence. Just like that lower level of your arrogance, the state of arrogance that you're stuck in. That you think that just because you've done it once, but failure to look at your track record with what you've been doing and how you've been doing it. And then you're wondering why every time you come back to that point, you're like, every time you come back to that point to a moment of assessment, it's usually on something physical. So you sitting there looking at yourself in the mirror like, damn, look at my eyes. And damn, look at how I look in these pants. And damn, look at how I look in these, look at how I look. Shit, I got 2 more years on this body before I gotta settle. Not realizing that from the lack mentality, you've already been settling. Think about that. You'll sit there with, most motherfuckers will sit there and use the original, what was given to them based on an aspect of the external tone set for themselves, the external narrative set for themselves. And you'll accept everything of the external narrative because it requires you not to think. It requires you not to take accountability. It requires you to, the only requirement is to have is to stay within, understand and use that as your point of detriment. No accountability. All throughout this week, I've been getting into, as I've been ushering into new positions, into those later on during the question and answer. As I've been ushering into this new position, the new things that I'm doing, and you're looking at yourself, and I'm really looking at the works that I've done up till this point. The process that I've undergone, the steps that I've went through up to this point, the decisions that I've made up to this point. And then I'm looking, I'm like, okay, cool. Now it's time to shed. Now it's time to drop. Now it's time to flush the dope in that mentality. Because I did a video early on in the week when I first shaved everything off and cleaned everything up. because now I'm inside of that position. See, when you're doing things based on the true aptitude of following and being inside of that moment, living inside of that alignment, becoming present, you automatically you're always in the right position. See, someone coming from a lack mentality, someone coming from that mentality of lack, they're always going to ask the questions. And one of those main questions, in some way, shape, or form, will always be, why did it take so long? Why did it take so long? Why it didn't happen sooner? I've done, or you start making speculations for yourself of, I've done the same. If you sit here and really look at yourself, I remember looking at myself like, I've done the same thing in every relationship or every single friendship. I've been the same exact way. And nobody in every single relationship, friendship, no one ever appreciated me. I always ended up getting used, I always end up getting mistreated, always end up getting hit upside the head, fights, all types of shit. But I had to look at a couple of levels inside of these states of pride with myself to really realize, like, yes, I keep doing the same thing every single time. But what is my pattern with what I do every single time? Because if I go into a space under the mindset of not learning, not being open, with an entitlement, this is going to be the one that means I'm never assessing. That means every space that I go into is based on my own faults. I've talked about this before. 90% of arguments in relationships, friendships, whatever it is, 90% of the beginning of a relationship based on trauma bonding. That means the trauma bonding is not just a relationship. We're talking about the job, talking about the friendship, we're talking about whatever you're trying to bond to. That gorilla glue bonding. 90% is going to be spent within infatuation. That means everything that comes up, this mentality goes through everything. I'm going to show you how it's synonymous with everything. So you sitting inside that space with yourself in the same way that you treated every friendship. That means in the friendship, you telling them all your problems, you telling them that your last friend, and you're telling everything from a place of lack because you feel the need to say it. You feel the need to get it all out. So you can look like you look like the victim. Automatically, you want to look like the victim. I don't know how many times I was going into spaces looking like the victim. I went to the job looking like the victim. So hell yeah, I got the job. Not really realizing this. Hell yeah, I got the job. I was looking like a victim. Hell yeah, I was looking like the victim. Because during the decline inside of whatever space I was going into, it was the victim mentality that had me lose the damn job. It was the victim mentality that had me lose it. But that same victim mentality that I wasn't checking with myself, I was just carrying that shit forward. So then I started looking, and you notice this, that victim mentality is what had me comfortable. In that degree of those degrees of detriment, that victim mentality had me comfortable. It had me do just enough. I didn't want to do anything more, because if I did anything more, then I would miss an opportunity, or somebody would see me a certain way, and then they would not be able to provide. The provisions wouldn't be given to me. Now, that was on one end. On the whole nother end, when I really started getting comfortable with myself, when I went through that stage of feeling myself, and I'm going to break this down. When I got into that stage of really feeling myself, that means really being in the state of my own self, in the earlier stages of my healing, the unconscious healing years, when I was really feeling myself, that means after a relationship, that's when you start feeling yourself. That means after the relationship, y'all broke up and now you feeling yourself. You're like, ooh, I dodged it, da 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 da. You start saying, so you start feeling yourself. You go get the haircut. You go get your hair done. You go start acting a certain way because you still stuck on the physical. I gotta look like I'm not hurt. So you dress up the shit. You put a bow on your shit, but it's still from the lack mentality. So, I'm gonna go get my. I cut. It was the big chop, girl. It was the big chop. Yeah, nigga. I had to go. Yo, man, I cut my head. I cut them off. I cut the locks. I shaved it back. I lined up the beard. Shorty said I could never get a beard. Now I'm growing out a beard. Everything that you do, 9 times out of 10 is because of another person. It's not because of you. Everything that you're doing in that state of pride, your pride depends on someone else. That arrogance depends on someone else. That detriment depends on somebody else. It never depends on you. You can't face that your own pride is what's destroying you. You can't build anything. You can't go any further because it would have to shatter your pride. I made a post yesterday. I made a post yesterday in the aspects of, I made a post today in the aspects you got to really understand and really got, when I talk about this level of honesty with yourself, you really gonna have to be facing some shit and be like, oh my God. But because you sitting there disgusted with baby father, baby mother, and all of these people in life, but that's as high as you're gonna be able to go because you ain't accepted that level yet. You ain't accepted the lessons of that level yet. That's why that shit keep filtering back in. Because anything higher than that, because yes, you will get something dropped down. Your spirit team will drop some shit down into your shit. Oh, they said they was ready for the next level. They said they was ready to break a generational curse. You said you was ready to break the curses and all of this shit. All right, cool. Now somebody comes into your space that has to shatter your pride. That's going to shatter your pride. And it's a good thing. You need it. They're going to shatter your pride. That pride that you held up by with yourself of, I've done this, I've done it all. Okay. They're going to shatter that. It's going to feel like sniper bullets, close range to your chest. It's going to hit. It's going to hurt. Because they're going to force you to face where you are. But here's the thing. That's been happening the entire time. That shit didn't happen in the relationship just happened. At the newest job, it's been happening. But as I talked about in the podcast, what you're noticing now with this cycle of events and energy is that the old paradigm no longer exists. It has no foundation. It has no footing. The old paradigm to where you used to be able to thrive on the mentality of I can get it by any means. I'll do whatever I want to get what I need to get and all of that. You're noticing that shit slowed the fuck down. That mentality is dead. There's nothing feeding into that energy anymore. Even with, this is the thing. You got to look at everything around you and look at it and be like, yo, that's the result of shit shifting. Like I was looking, someone sent me a video. I don't know why people love sending me certain videos, but they sent me a video of Kevin Samuels. I was like, okay. This nigga said 2 things inside of that space. And I was laughing when I heard it. I was like, did this nigga that say that? That means this shit is doing what it's supposed to be doing. The spectrum is changing. This motherfucker said, oh, y'all bitches talk about manifesting. So y'all going off hope and manifesting. I'm laughing because he was like, what's faith without work? Since you spiritual, he was like, what's faith without work? Faith without work is dead, right? But you can just hope. Hope ain't gonna do shit. And I'm looking like, yep, that's right. That's about right. Yep. See, when we're looking at the aspects of this is why I say that it's so important that the only person that matters is you. This is what I mean by the only person that matters is you. Today is the only day that matters. Today, in this day, no matter whether it's Moon Day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Venus or the day of release, Saturday, whatever day it is, only one day matters. If you take your mentality to only one day matters, and you really look at that moment, you will achieve so much in that day based on understanding, based on the power of that manifestation. So you sitting there with yourself and you're wondering, you can like use an example. In the beginning of the year, if you made plans or ideas inside of your mind, okay, you woke up, new year, new me. New year, new me. New year, new me. I'm about to do this. So you go to the gym, you go work out, you go take a course. My Auburn is showing. Everybody leave me alone. You take a class, you say I'm signing up for school, you start doing all of these things. But I want you to understand how this energy works, and everything down here is on the frequency of the universal laws. Similar to the fiscal year. If you did not know, this is the end of the fiscal year. The end of the fiscal year was right there between November 15th. That's why they always talk about taxes. You can pay taxes up to November 15th. I'm going to use that to break this down. But I want you to understand this. The fiscal year ends in January, in November. Right there, between September and November. November, October. Yeah, right there in October. That's why they give you Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's why you're giving Thanksgiving and Christmas. Black Friday, Cyber Monday. That's why you're giving all of these holidays in the beginning of the cycle. Before Easter. Before your rising. During the spring where you actually can bloom. You're given a false sequence. You're given that false sequence and you live in that false sequence. So everything you're doing is inside of that false sequence. So think about this. At the end of the fiscal year, when you're looking at how shit is broken down here, when you're looking at the end of the fiscal year, that's when all your plans for the beginning of the year are to start. That means at the end of the year, reports are to be put together. That means anything that you have planned to set up to go into the new year with should be done by October. That means by the time December comes, whatever money's coming in, whatever energy's coming in during that assessment, that's how you can relax. That's how you can hibernate. That's how you can cleanse. That's how you do your cleanses. That's how you start writing up your plan, writing up your petitions, and getting everything together. Because remember, without the spiritual, you can't align anything. Everything in between how you align, that's how you manifest. That's the idea and the thought. So if you're sitting inside of that space with yourself and you're talking about, oh, I'm going to do this, but then you wait until January 1st to start doing some shit, when the ball drop, you're behind the curve. See, I had to accept that you'll be behind the curve. You can catch up, but you got to catch that you were behind it. See, this is when you're talking about, I'm going to do a ritual on the full moon. Okay. Well, you look at the calendar. You know exactly when the moon phases are. What's stopping you from beginning that in the beginning of the month, getting those things together? Especially if you know how you are. Because you know how you are. You are not, and this is what I mean, you are not that false pride, that detriment, that lack mentality is going to have you sitting there thinking that I'm going to sit here on the full moon and make a gigantic release and call my power back to me. But you ain't prepared for it. So you mean everything that you're thinking about is that you're just thinking about the last 3 weeks? No, it's everything from that point to that point. So if you're not doing it beforehand, you're not going to keep up with it after. But this is when we go into that fiscal point. When we talk about that fiscal year, when it ends, you set up your reports. You set up what you're about to do right now. You set it up here. You set it up here. That way, by January, February, March, you already have things in play. You already got some shit. You already have things. Even if it's just an idea, you got that shit in play. That way, you're like, okay, cool. January, I know January is going to be this. Even if you don't have a fully structured plan, you know in January, that's when you're going to put that work in. You set up your work. And you know it's based on, okay, cool. Because I can look back at my last January, I look back at my last February, my last year's this, and this. I took accountability. There was a time when everybody was talking about let's go on a trip. I should have said no because I knew myself. I should have said fuck no. I shouldn't have went. I should have waited. Even if I did go on that trip with everybody, I should have went during the last week. Everybody wanted to go spend a whole summer in the Bahamas or whatever. I should have waited the last week because I know how my job is. I know that the slow period happens at this time. So I'm going to go the last week. Fuck it. I'm going to go by myself. I need to go by myself anyway. Now I got to ask myself the question, what's wrong? What is this fear of me not going by myself? What is this fear of me going through this experience by myself? Because 90% of the shit based on that pride, remember that pride needs someone to ride with it. That pride always needs something to ride with them. That arrogance always needs something to ride with it. That guilt always needs somebody to ride with it. That insecurity always needs somebody to ride with it. So now when you start looking at everything that you create inside of your face, you notice that a lot of the shit that you got is only something was riding with it. Girl, it's okay. We can just go to the club. Okay. But now you went to the club, woke up late as hell, mad as hell at work, and then you had to go stop by the gas station, and all of a sudden there's this nigga that's walking by. You see this nigga walk by every day, and y'all worked at the same place. And then you sitting there mad because you looking at him. See, that's why. And then you mad because this nigga looked at you because you feeling mad because you couldn't get no plate up that night. And then now you sitting there and you looking at this nigga walking by every day. That nigga work with you. But then that's your opportunity. You were triggered. This is what was triggering you. You saw that nigga walking and looked at you and it triggered you. What did it trigger? That's where your pride comes in. That's where your pride gets tested. That's how that test come up in there. Because that nigga been walking up and down that street forever. That nigga worked with you. But you never asked this motherfucker one time because of your pride on both ends. Your pride, like if you had, because if I ask this nigga, do we need a ride to the job? He gonna think I like him. But that's your reflection coming in there. Nobody could like me when I was walking. Nobody. You think about all those times back in the day when your ass was mad and upset and you weren't getting no play because wherever you was at. So now you trying to make, that's your reflection. That's that pride getting hit on. But if you really sat there and looked at this motherfucker and you actually gave him a ride, think about what the conversation could be on another parallel because he's in that space because he matches a parallel to where you want to go, where you're trying to get to. So imagine if you gave this motherfucker a ride. Somebody else from your job give this motherfucker a ride and they have a whole conversation. And then that's your home girl. That's the girl that your work friend at the job like, girl, like, I did not know, like, he walks every day. He's saving up money for his business. Did you know that this is actually his part-time job? Girl, do you know where he live at? But like, this is what, you ain't gonna listen to that. You gonna wait, it's gonna trigger you. But like, do you know where he stays at? He stays in that gated community up the street from your apartment complex. That nigga live up there? I'm working 2 jobs and to pay my car note and to do all this. How can this motherfucker get that? If you let that pride subside, you would have got the game. See, accountability. This is the key of accountability. This is accountability that takes ownership. Without accountability, that ownership becomes possession. That possession becomes obstacles. That obstacle is the emotional void. So now inside of your space, every time someone comes and smiles in your face or says something to you, based on that not taking accountability for the internal work with yourself, you're going to seek based on possession. So now those same conversations that been happening inside of your mind, why me? Why me? Why can't I get anybody in my life? Why this can't happen to me? See, because you're not owning where you learn that from. What's coming into your space is direct of that. But the way that you approach this, if you approach it from the lack mentality, you're automatically going to approach it as an obstacle. And the obstacle comes like this. Let's say you've been doing some external work. You've been working out. You've been in school. You've been doing whatever. You've been doing some light work. But you know, I know, you know, all your spirit team know, everybody know that you need to be doing some deeper shit. And all of a sudden, now you're sitting there and everything's going good. So now this guy or this chick's in your life right now because they noticed you shining and you glowing, sis. You glowing, king. You glowing, king. You deserve somebody to hold your crown, king. You glowing, queen. You deserve somebody to. But now you stop doing your shit. You stop meditating. You stop meditating. You stop setting your daily affirmations. You stop washing your hands. You stop washing your hands off first and then hitting your hands with the cinnamon because you saw the little thing about wiping your hands with the hoodoo trick with cinnamon. You stop doing a lot of shit because that embarrassment comes up. If he sees me doing my shit, he don't think that I'm weird. I got to show him that later because it's not you yet. This key, you got to understand that shit ain't you yet. Your pride is going to help. Your pride is going to knock you out of alignment because this person saw you, but you haven't. They only see you based on the depth that you see yourself. You haven't seen yourself deep enough yet. Your track record. So what do you start doing? You start talking about the same old shit. So you ain't built substance in the new space. You ain't built no substance in this new space. You ain't built no grounding in this new space. So you ain't even going to think like, damn, because of this, that came. But I'm losing. This is an obstacle because I got to think about my conversation. Anything that is an opportunity, because the opportunity and the obstacle are in the same box. Anything that is the opportunity challenges my pride. It challenges that pride. It forces me to look at how I'm living in a state of lack with myself based on a reaction, based on infatuation. See, a lot of times you get some new shit and you get infatuated and you want that to be, you thought that was your abundant blessing or your blessing or that abundance or the prosperity that you were looking for. No, that was a fragment of it. And the craziest thing about it is you can't understand that there's fragments because you're not even you still got yourself fragmented. So you're only used to fragments. You are not used to the whole thing. You are not used to the whole body of work because you're not looking at your whole body of work. So you got that one, yes, I'm going to try to make everything fit through there. That's not what that was for. See, that goes from the lack of boundaries. That goes from what you learned from when you were younger. Remember, it all comes from somewhere. That came from where you learned when you were younger. You didn't learn boundaries. You didn't learn boundaries, so you didn't learn assessment. So now you're sitting inside of that space and you're trying to make everything come through that one point. But that point wasn't for that. It could be used for that. It could be used in directing falling into further alignment, but you got to be honest with yourself. And it becomes that it's that question, it's the age-old thing that you said, I never knew this existed, or I never knew I was worthy of this. You got to check yourself in that moment. Because that's the mental aspect. That's the psychological aspect of you sitting there inside of that trauma bond with yourself. Because now it went from physical, saying I never knew somebody would accept me at where I'm at right now. It started, now it's in that mental space. Now you sitting there, yeah, I accept you. I used to be insecure about how I looked and how I used to feel, and it's okay. I used to be, I'm insecure too. But there's a difference with the conversation, because all you wanted to hear was, all that demon wanted to hear if you say was to hear this motherfucker say they were insecure. Because 90% of the time, based on the wounded complex, that's all you listen to anyway. Based on how you navigate yourself inside of your space, that's what you listen for anyway. You listen for somebody to say that they're wounded in some way, shape, or form. You listen for the wound. You listen for the guilt. You listen for the doubt. You feel for that. You feeling around in their darkness for something that matches something inside of their darkness. That's how a trauma bond is sustained. That's how your pride gets sustained. So the way that you've learned to mask your insecurity, to mask your pain, that's what you're putting on the table as an offer. And that offer slowly gets boiled all the way down and basically becomes some bull. It's always on some bullshit. There's a difference between you saying, hey, I want to build something and I just want to copy and paste. There's a difference between building and copy and pasting. Building take a lot more discipline than copying and pasting. See, a lot of us had the trauma bond is the copy and paste mentality. You just take out pieces you don't want you just took out pieces that you don't want, and then you put them over here. But then you got to realize that this copy and projected image, it has to live. So guess what? That fiscal year got to stay strong. Everything you did in every fiscal year got to keep going. That you got to, because you were running in the black. But as you start to elevate, when we think about the business aspect, when you're elevating yourself, you're basically going to run into the red. The old company got to go bankrupt. The old contracts got to dissolve. The old company's got to go bankrupt. You got to go file the Chapter 11 inside of that aspect and face and deal with yourself. So you're going to go into the red. See, you don't want to go into that red. You don't want to go into that birthing. You don't want to hit that new cycle before you can go back into the black or build inside of that nothingness. But first, you got to define what you created out of the nothing here. See, everybody want to see. I always know the motherfuckers want to. Yeah, we gonna. Soon as they get off the planet, or this happen and this happen, then we gonna get back to doing us. But until then, we gonna talk about it. We gonna talk about this. And we gonna talk about this. But if somebody come in there that's really been doing the work and they start saying certain things, that starts disrupting shit. That's what you're doing. You are the disruption. The reason that it's triggered you and you sitting here at this moment is because you are a disruption. You must accept being that disruption. I had to accept being the disruption. First to myself. I had to accept that I'm gonna be shaking some shit loose inside of myself. My old beliefs, my learned behaviors, my patterns. It wasn't just some of them, it was all of them. The thing that gets you locked up is you think it is that some of your patterns are bad. You just think it's some of your patterns you need to change. You just think it's some of your habits you gotta get rid of. You just think it's some of the things you're doing that you gotta stop doing or bring into a state of dormancy and not truly come into a state of submission. And then the moment that you come into that space, that shit's gonna reactivate. That's all it does. Oh, you can lie to yourself all day. All it's gonna do is reactivate. Because it doesn't matter. It's something that you really have to understand about you and your truth or your space where you're at, what you're doing. If what you do works, if what you're doing works, truly works, then at every level that you go to, when you're leveling up, it should work. It should work. It should do exactly what you wanted, the program of sequence, what you wanted to do. But see, the thing is, When you're doing your work and you've been outside, sitting beside your trauma, sitting beside all the shit that's been going on in your life, and you really ain't been assessing it, you've built an illusionary space that automatically augments everything. So it all looks like it works, only based on everything else on this side being exactly what you wanted it to be. Your mom is exactly who you said she was. So how, but here comes honesty. Why are you still disgusted with your mother if you know who your mother is? There's a difference between you knowing of what your mother is and truly knowing your mother. Because in order to really know your mother, you must know yourself. In order to know your father, you must know yourself. In order to really know your sister, you got to know yourself. See, that knowing yourself and knowing of, broke this down before. There's a difference between related and family. The relations and in the true aspects of family, or how I used to break it down when I was back in the 8th and 9th grade, going through my identity crises, going through my crisis of understanding my family and my familia, was family is always a Y at the end. There's always a point that needs to be created to that Y. But familia was always. That means we were always evolving, always having hard conversations, always organized, always in some type of shit, always in some state of growth. Even though it was at a negative aspect of my, there's always something there to grow in. There's always something there. There's always that roof. There's always that point to keep making me going up. As opposed to that why, there was always something in that downfall. There was always that downfalling point. There was something always pulling me down inside of that space. But you got comfortable with that shit. And then you keep feeding that shit throughout the year, whether it's holidays, birthdays, whatever the fuck it may be. You keep feeding that. So now going back to the fiscal year, this is why you get Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber. This is why you get Christmas. This is why you get New Year's, Valentine's Day, followed by whatever birthdays, whatever else, sprinkle out into that. Your design is inside of that. Your design is created inside of that sequence. That sequence is meant to get you stuck. So you sitting there, I remember sitting there every fucking time talking about I hate my mother. But I had this inherent need to go take my mother to go get something to eat. Just to show this false sense of pride that I could take my mother somewhere to eat. Just to take my mother somewhere she has never been and she'll never ever go. This excessive need to be seen and accepted. I'm still living in the roles. I'm still living in the space of, I'm still living in the thought like, this is the bitch that said I was an accident. Let me prove something to her this year. Because that was the truth behind her birthday. That was the truth of me taking her out on her birthday. That was the truth behind every ride that I gave her. That was the truth behind the reason why every time some bad shit happened, I had to go back to my mother's house. That was the reason that was behind it. It was always based on that bitch said I was an accident. So it was always from a space of possession. It was always from a space of possession. See, a lot of times the shit that you did, your baby father was from a space of possession. Your baby mother was from a space of possession. Ex-husband, they were from points of possession. They were from points of possession. That relationship that didn't work, it was from a point of possession. At some point in time, the possession in that you ensued, the emotions that you put into that space, that possession, that spirit, that demon, got kicked out of the body, got kicked out of the host. Oh, wait. That nigga, that. And it always happens. There's some point in some type of conversation inside of that space that changes everything. Changes everything. And it can go one of two. It can go both ways. It can go both ways. It can go to a way when that nigga lied to you like every other nigga lied to you. But somewhere in this relationship, that motherfucker lied, but he owned up to his shit. But since you're used to niggas lying to you, you can't see this person past that point. So now you stuck there. The only reason that you stuck there is because you were carried by the infatuation to that point. So now you stuck here because in order for you to go forward, you now must expose yourself. Because they said, okay, I apologize. And they started working on themselves. They started dealing with themselves, started facing themselves because they really saw you, because the image that you gave them was different and it sparked something in them. But you still activating off pride and lack. You still activated off of, if I'm not free time, you're still sitting there thinking, if I'm not free time, I'm not free time, and I'm not when you have time. Prioritize me. But if you really understood the structure of somebody with an ownership mentality, an accountability mentality, you wouldn't even ask of that, because you would that require you to ask it of yourself. See, the imbalances that come inside of spaces with yourself is because you're not asking that of yourself first. Because in order to ask for that, you got to define what that means. See, the surface level definition is you're thinking stability. Motherfuckers think stability based on pride, structure based on pride, standard based on pride. So all of these are based on relevance and appearances. None of this shit is based on the true aspects of going within yourself and assessing your true standard, where you learned the basis of your standard, the basis of your value. Your entire value system was the first nut that you ever had. Your first line of value was the first accident that you ever got in. The first aspects of your emotions and working with your emotions and dampening your emotions was that first beating that you received. I'll give you something to cry about. So that's the first time you learn how to dampen your emotions. That first conversation, instead of them coming and having a conversation with you after the beating, your mama came in there your mama asked you, like, are you hungry? And that was her way of apologizing. So that became an imprint inside of your mind. So not only at your job, this is how you laid the base of your job, how you define how you got rewarded. At your job beats your ass. You show up to work every day on time, stay late, pick up extra hours, all of this shit, get beat the fuck down just to be able to go on lunch and eat some food. See how you stuck within the mentality? And then you apply that to everything that you do inside of your life. That becomes the application that you signed on. That's the application. That's the first. Every application that you signed is using the same energy. That's how you keep getting it. That's how you keep getting it. And it's based on that expectation, but you'll never get out of that cycle. You get stuck in that cycle. Mm-hmm. They feeding your ass pizza. Here's a free pin. Here's a free reward for signing up for your insurance. Everything down here is based on that same gifting system until you learn how to face the opportunity. Everything down here is based on the emotion. It don't matter what you do down here, it's all based in that emotion, the energetic exchange of your energy. The law of even exchange. Mm-hmm. The law of even exchange. You're energetically putting out a certain wavelength of energy, wondering why you keep getting what you're getting. You putting out the bare minimum. You're putting out from a lack mentality and you expect the highest quality from something. You putting out from a lack mentality. That's the first echo. That shit bounces off of something. That bounces off something else that you defined. So now that's what's creating your space. So now inside of your space, everything's bounced off this echo of this lack mentality. So when you don't get it, now you can react. Okay, that's what you've always done. That's how you've always acted. That's how you've always moved inside of your space. But then here's how it gets tricky. Because I've done this shit before. I've done that shit before. You've done it plenty of times, didn't realize that you did it. Now, you're now assessing resources. But through the ego, this is how through the ego. Through the ego, we feel we have control because control is not power. Power is not found in control, it's found in authority. But you feel because you have more control over your emotions, that when something comes into your space, you have more control. You don't have authority. You have not created any alignments based on authority yet. See, remember, as you shutting shit down and you shifting and you changing shit, you gotta create things based on the new authority. The new aspects of being intimate with your power. You understanding your power, you being able to use your energy. You going through transmutation. You ain't built nothing over there into that space. You still gonna do things based on control, i.e., you stuck in the state of I need control, i.e., possession. So my possessions are the control. If I don't possess it, I know somebody that does possess it. That's going to help me. And this is the point of transmutation. Because at a point in time, you got to make that transmute too. That means whatever you're trying to take it from, I got to define that before I bring it over here. I keep trying to bring, that's like, think about it like this. You stay in your house, you stay in your apartment complex, wherever you stay at, and they don't allow dogs. They don't allow animals. They don't even have a fee for you to pay to keep animals on the property. But you got an animal inside of your house. Now, all of a sudden, when they come and do the inspections, or they come and change filters or do whatever they need to do, now it's a problem. For the last 8.5 years, 6 years, 4 years, to however long you've been living in that space, it's never been a problem. But now it's an issue because you brought in the uncontrolled variable. You brought in the variable that was against the sequence of events inside of that space. New variable, new formula, new solutions, or new problems. If this variable is based upon a problem, i.e. a void that I'm trying to fill, then it will automatically arise all problems, all my other issues, all my problems. The truth will be reflected in the results of my space. So you sitting there, use another example. You mad because in your mind, you're like, remember we talked about the value of you with money. Remember we talked about the value of you with money and how you valued money and how you define money. And you define money by worth. So that was the worth of the value system. The same value system that your mom used for money, as an example. The same value system. That means I'm gonna go fuck this nigga, or you have multiple stepfathers or uncles come through the house or whatever, or on the father end, whichever end. Now, that becomes your narrative. That becomes your pride. Because in your mind, you're going to say, I'm going to not be defined by needing a man for anything. So inside of that same space, you got to remember, you're becoming your mother on the other end of the spectrum. You are creating a new axiom. Because on one end is what your mom is, And on the other end is everything you manifest is going to slide on that scale. Everything you're going to get is going to slide on that scale, on both sides of that scale. So now, this is how you build your world. On this end, where it comes closer to your mother, this is where all of your opportunities are going to come up. The weak moments in your life, the moment you had a child, the moment that that nigga had you acting a certain way, the moment that that chick had you acting a certain way. And everything on this end is going to be the obstacles, the things in which you keep into your life so you don't have to face those obstacles of your mother. See how you just created this whole bridge that connects to both points. It doesn't matter if you don't have the relationship here or don't understand this part here. All of those bridges link. And until you're willing to walk over the bridge and go have a conversation over here, or go on that other side and have that conversation, have that uncomfortable conversation, you're always going to keep treading the water or keep that same shit going that it needs to exist. You can burn the bridge down. But the energy will still be present because it's within inside of you. You built the bridge inside of your mind first. You can physically burn the bridge. You can say fuck your mom for the next. I remember I said fuck my mom for like 8 years. But since the memory was still in the muscle memory was still active inside of my mind for that 8 years, I had relationships that resembled that in order for me to exist in that space. That pride needed to exist. I needed to stay in that lower level of myself. Anything that challenged the lower levels of myself, anything that challenged me to assess and work in the lower levels of myself, I didn't want to do. And it came up in so many different ways. It came up in that promotion at the job. It came up in that chance to move across the country. It came up in that move or that chance to move or whatever it was. It always came up in these ways. They came within the walls or the outskirts of my comfort zone. Man, that's too far away from family. Wait, I'm the person that was talking about my family ain't shit. I'm the one that said this, and this, but I get this opportunity on the table, and now I'm looking at it as an obstacle. Because if I go to that space, I got to start over. See, this is the symbolism of you starting to fuck over. This is you starting over. Just the idea of starting over scares the shit out of you. Just the idea of really doing the work scares the shit out of you. And you'll make up every fucking excuse. You can make up all. I don't do that because it requires 4 years of credibility. Okay. So you rather sit there for the next 4 years and not do anything? And then at the end of 4 years, now you're 4 years older, and then you're now more stressed out? Your stress is based on your rising stress, your anxiety. They keep hitting that ceiling because your anxiety can become your anxiety, your anxiousness, those can become amazement. Those can become something astonishing. Those can transmute into the higher levels, but you got to assess the layers that they're connected to before it even can break through. So if you still sitting inside of that, man, but okay, don't start. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because that mentality is what gets you stuck. It's no person, place, thing. It's you. It's that mentality. You feel that you need you sitting here upset because I got a weakness. This goes to brothers and this goes to the sisters, brothers, everybody. You say you got a weakness. Okay. Have you learned how to transmute that energy to the highest point? I've talked about this in 2 lectures talking about sacred energy exchange. The first one, sex 101, the higher understanding. And then the second one talked about the higher drive. There is a book called The Way of the Superior Man. If you have not read the book, The Way of the Superior Man, if you have not grabbed the audio book of The Way of the Superior Man, if you have not grabbed that book, I suggest you go grab it because it tells everything. It talks about it from the masculine and the feminine principle. It don't talk about male and female. It talks about from the masculine and the feminine principle. And which one I've talked about these seats and which one you're sitting in. See, a lot of times your pride sits in the opposite seat the pride sits in the opposite seat. It sits in the opposite seat to your trauma. That detriment sits in the opposite seats to the traumatic experience. That's how that shit's weaved together. That's why it's weaved in your DNA so fucking bad. But it's weaved into your DNA. That's the weaving inside of your DNA. Trauma, entitlement, entitlements, all the way down the family line, family tree that created you. And you're still acting out these processes. You're still acting out the family secret. You can't sit there. You cannot imagine having the conversation about the whereabouts of your firstborn, secondborn, any born inside of the family. But you trying to say, I'm going to break generational wealth curses and acquire generational wealth. But you got to understand 2 sides of that spectrum. That spectrum doesn't match. You can't pull these 2 things together. These spectrums doesn't match. Because the family secret is based on, they built wealth based around this secret. So everybody's jobs and everybody went to the military in your family and everybody did certain shit. All of that, the reason dividend payments had to be paid is because of this original secret, this original debt. So you can have the idea of a business, but if no one inside of your family has a business, this is on certain, think about this. No one in your family has started a company or a business. And when they did start the company or business, it failed. The reason that it failed is because it did not match the original causes, the original contract that was taken out with that energy that worked, that everybody agreed to. And when we talk about this agreement, just like you came down here with a purpose, plan, and assignment, before you trickled down, everybody else had that same assignment. So everybody came up or came down, same assignments. They don't remember it just like you don't remember it, but they energetically remember it. It's energetically within their muscle memory. That's why they jerk. That's why when you see your family members make the face at you, that's energetic muscle movement. And they'll say, I don't know what you were talking about with their face. They really don't know what the fuck you're talking about. It's automatic muscle memory. It's in the DNA. It's in their sequence. When you start triggering it, that's when it hits. When you start making the move, that's when it starts hitting. That muscle memory, that's when that dryness comes out. Even if they don't know that they're doing it. They thought that it was normal. It's only because that's their muscle memory activated. You're changing shit. You're distorting the environment. It's like, go look at Constantine. You remember when Beelzebub was looking inside the mirror and that nigga shot the gun and his face started to warp? That's what you doing to motherfuckers. But that's deeper into your shit. See, most motherfuckers can't even get past the surface level or the physical voids that are now being created in order for that to come through. Every time you ushering in new shit, you open up the void for the things to come forth. And until you deal with the unsolved, it will always outweigh the resolve. It don't matter how much good shit you thought that you was doing, the unresolved is always going to outweigh it. That's why when you sitting in that space and you mad at yourself because this is your 7th, 8th time, and you're like, why? What's your track record with people? What's your track record in the relationship with yourself? How does the relationship, how do you change? How do you change? What do you become in the relationship that is different than what you are outside of the relationship? See, because if what you did worked in the individual aspect, it will work in the relationship. But that pride got you becoming the chameleon in the relationship. I remember becoming the chameleon inside of relationships. I become exactly what they wanted me to be. I'd say exactly what they wanted me to say. I do exactly what they needed me to do. All to serve a purpose to get some shit. And we back and forth. Relationship be that all day. That's what be falling apart at the end of the fucking relationship. All because at the end, y'all keep throwing out cards. Y'all keep throwing out cards. You run out of cards. Then y'all reshuffle. But now you got some of their deck. You got some of your. They got some of your cards. You got some of your cards. It's that y'all throwing these cards, but not looking at the face value. Since you're not playing the values on top of these cards, and you're just throwing these cards in, and you got that blind. You don't want to look at the value of the card. You don't want to look at the value. You're not playing based on value. You're simply saying, well, I got a card too, and I got a card to play, and I got a card to play. Y'all sitting there playing I declare war with motherfuckers, but you ain't looking at the value. You ain't flipping them bitches over. You just keep shuffling that shit back into each other. The only reason that it works is because you're used to arguments, you're used to being loud, you're used to being a certain way. You're used to saying the same thing in every time, in every fucking space. Well, I thought because back then it didn't work because they weren't ready or something was wrong with them, but you never talked about yourself. See, this is going to be that time when you need to have that conversation with yourself. The true conversation with yourself. You couldn't always have been ready, but it was something about them. You couldn't have always been ready, and it was something about them. You couldn't have been the best at all your jobs, but it was something about the job. It can't always be, it's never been on them. It's what you're not learning. It's what you're not assessing with yourself. It's what you're not facing with yourself. You out of alignment. You've been out of alignment. That's why every time you get mad, you're getting shaky. You stay shaking. You stay angry. You stay upset. You stay needing something in your space to help you deflect some shit, but it's somebody else. But you the one that keep regressing. It get even deeper when all of a sudden you see them 3 years from now and, oh my God, that nigga's married. Girl, he got married to some other chick. Yeah, I was too much for him. But in reality, the same shit that he told that shorty over there, or what they doing, what you seeing them doing, you haven't understood that there's a base to that to get to that point. And he gave you that game, or she gave you that game. They gave you the game of what you needed to get to that next point. And they were willing to work with you at that point. But because of your pride, you lost that opportunity. It's your pride fucking up your opportunities. It's your pride fucking you up and got you running around and you feeling like you got to go do everything with everybody else. But when it comes doing shit with the motherfucker that's beside you, because they don't match that narrative, they make you uncomfortable. That's what's fucking you up. That's what fucks a lot of motherfuckers up. I remember that shit fucking me up. Because motherfucker come to me be like, yo, well, we gonna do this, this, and this. I be like, my pride wouldn't allow me to ask questions. My pride wouldn't allow me to ask the questions. I'd be like, well, and it would be on simple shit. It would be on things like, use an example. I remember like one time it was funny as fuck. I was like, I just lost my job, didn't have no, like broke. So my natural insecurities coming up. I feel powerless. I ain't got no money. All of these aspects would come up. These are a lot of the wounds I had to deal with. So I remember like, I'm in this relationship at this time. She was like, hey, let's go to Carowinds and let's go to amusement park. I was like, I ain't got no money. She was like, I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you that. I was like, we gonna go because you really need this shit. Because you like this shit's fucking you up and you really need this shit because you've been like, and I was like, all right, we go to this trip. We go on this trip. And I'm like, all right, cool. I had a bomb ass fucking time. My traumatized ass, instead of accepting that moment and be like building from that moment and accepting that moment and building with that moment, I wanted to one up that moment. In order to repay my gratitude, because my gratitude had a price, I was like, I'm gonna go bigger on the next trip that we take when I get some money. But here's the key: it wasn't that trip that I was trying to up. It wasn't that trip that I was trying to updo. It wasn't that person. This narrative had been present inside of my mind. That sequence had been present inside of my mindset for years upon years. And it was just activated. See, when all of these traps that you set, you set up the trap. You trapped yourself inside of that space. You put yourself there. Because you got to think about this game that you've been playing with yourself based on value, worth, nobody outdoing you, no one outshining you. That's really what it was. It had shit to do with fucking love. Because I didn't love myself. I didn't know myself. So the relationship was not based on love. See, this is when we get deep into that. The relationship wasn't based on love. It was based on convenience. It was based on convenience. It was a body. Its presence was to serve a purpose or to serve based on possession. So when I'm pouring into it, though I'm not pouring into myself, of course, at the end of the relationship, the job, the friendship, it always be the same shit. I poured so many years into this space, and this is all that I get. Because I'm pouring from a half empty ass glass anyway. I'm barely making it anyway. I'm barely in a certain position anyway. So in reality, what I'm really trying to tell myself is through pride and through hope that if I show everything that I'm doing and I say from a lack mentality what I don't want, then this person is going to pour into me. They're going to give me the happiness that I've not yet defined inside of myself yet. They're going to make me happy. They're going to bring all these things to me. And they're going to bring it exactly the way that I need it or in some way, shape, or form. And if they do something that's new and exciting, I can be infatuated and I can be like, see, that's why I stuck to my shit. But see, that's how you get stagnant and how you getting stuck. That's how you get stuck in that detriment. Because the definition come up and it come up in the most simplest of ways. That's what you got to keep selling. You keep selling the unresolved. You keep selling the rights to your story. You just keep selling it off and hoping somebody gonna buy it. Now you mad because now you sitting here, you damn near 40, 50, whatever age you was at right now, and you like, oh my God. Or you said like, oh, bitches ain't shit. Or niggas ain't shit. Man, it's this world, white man out here. Man, we can't get no community started. You don't know what the fuck saving is. You don't have the literacy. You're not aligned to it. Because if you really wanted to talk about saving all of these different opportunities to grow inside of a space, it starts with how you align your own mindset. It starts with you stepping outside of your comfort zone. It starts with you going on Google or going online and be like, let me read some shit on, let me just, even if I don't know what the fuck is going on, let me start this repetition of watching this on YouTube. Let me replace the 8.5 hours a day that I spend watching dumbass shit and start replacing 30 minutes of every hour with something else. Just one thing. 30 minutes. Let me just replace 30 minutes. And if I can't replace 30 minutes, that's my problem. That's what I need to assess. Fuck everything else. I must accept and be honest with myself and come to this point of true humility to myself and understand that shit, I can't even sit down for 30 minutes. I can't sit down for 15 minutes. I can't get rid of doing something for more than 72 hours. That's the root of my problem. Fuck everything else that I'm going to say is the root of my fucking problem. Fuck me saying I don't have enough money. Fuck me saying I don't have a ride. Fuck me saying I don't have this, that, and the third. What the fuck, the thing that I really need to fucking start dealing with first is why I can't sit down for 15 minutes and assess it. That's my first step. Hi, I have a problem. I can't sit down for 15 minutes and acknowledge that I have some problems that I need to fix. That's my first fucking problem. Before I do anything else, I must throw up this pride. I must throw up this pride, this false sense of self that I've programmed into myself, and really sit down and do an assessment. And whatever comes up needs to come up at that point in time. You think your pride is what kept everything together to this point. That's why the moment that you really start doing this shit, you really start changing these sequences, that's when that shit started falling apart. Because that wasn't defined by that wasn't defined by your higher self when it comes to the aspects of abundance. See, you've been feeding yourself bullshit. You haven't even been feeding yourself. Because to feed oneself, that means you understand what you're putting into your body. To nourish oneself means I know what I'm putting inside of my body. You simply being second. You've been accepting what you've been fed, but it's not nourishing, because to nourish oneself is to know what I'm putting into my body. To nourish yourself is to go back to that point when you were a little kid and you sat out in the backyard and you made mud pies and made cakes and made food out of leaves and grass and dirt and ants and grasshoppers and all that shit. And you sat out there and you defined what all of these items were and you made it. And then when your mom or your older brother, older sister came out the house and were like, you can't eat that. Of course I can't eat it. It's dirt, it's grass, it's ants. You gave yourself your own stopping point of how far you were willing to go. That's feeding yourself. That's nourishing yourself. You knew that you knew that only could go so far. You knew it. You had trust in yourself. But you knew it served a purpose based on creating something. You knew it went to a certain point before you had to readjust and go in the house and go get some real food. See, you lost that process. Through this process of you separated from yourself, you lost that ability. The way that you used to assess value of yourself, you've lost that ability. It's time to regain those lessons. It's time to regain that shit. Or else you're going to keep doing the same shit you did. The same shit you did this year, you're going to do next year. All of the opportunities that are going to pass you by, All of the opportunities that are going to pass you by, that pass you by this year, are going to pass you by next year. And you're going to say the same exact shit. Damn, I could have been there this year. At that moment in time, that's when it's time to assess what the fuck you need to do. That's why it came past your radar. That's why it came past your screen. That's why it came by. And every thought that came up is the shit that you need to assess. You saying you can't get there because you ain't got the ride or whatever. You ain't got the money for it or whatever. But in that same instance, it might, let's give an example. That shit can be 6 months out. And you say you ain't got the money for 6 months. But inside of that 6 months, let's say some shit costs $300 as an example. 6 months. In a month, you can make $300. It's $10 a day in 30 days. It's $10 a day for 30 days. It's $300. That's about $300. Easy. But how you define $10 in your life, that's what's going to separate. That's what's going to keep you separated from that goal. How you define money. How you define the flow of energy into your space. That's what's stopping you from getting to the process. Get into whatever you to attract and fall into the alignment of what you're trying to get to. That's what's stopping you. Nobody outside of you can stop you. Because they stop me because they keep telling, okay, that's nice. Let's talk about tragedies. Let's talk about the tragedies that are happening in your life with your family members. All of those tragedies that are happening with your family members are instances that are telling you it's time for you. If it was a death, it's telling you it's time for you to transition through some shit. If somebody lost some shit, like a crisis, destroyed some shit in their destroyed some shit, lost house, lost whatever, is letting you know it's time to, is letting you know that you are stuck in possessions. Because what are you going to say? What is the first thing that we say as motherfucking niggas every time somebody, man, they worked so hard for all of those things and it just all went away just like that. And then what's the next thing you say? I wish I could do something to help them get some stuff back in their life. Damn, I'm this and I should be in this position and be able to help them. Everything that you just said, that was your sign. All that shit you just said, that's your sign. But because you did it from the emotional point and you lack the emotional intelligence to sit with yourself, what are you going to do? You're going to live out that thought. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to do what I can. Because it feeds your cycle of doing whatever the fuck you need to do to live the life that you live. That's what this motherfuckers get stuck on that shit all the time. You didn't spend a whole month doing everything else for everybody else inside of your family, but at the end of the day, when it comes to you to sit down with yourself, now you mad because you've absorbed all of this energy and you got to get it off. So now now you in whatever relationship you in, now you wondering why it's shaky. It's because you keep bringing this negative ass energy into your space. That's why your shit ain't working. That's why the shit don't flourish. That's why she don't want to touch you no more, bro. That's why she don't want, because you ain't doing the work. Motherfuckers tired at any level of motherfuckers ain't doing the work. It's like the equivalent to some lower level shit that if you're sitting in your space, motherfuckers automatically operate towards things that bring them peace, whether it's in the lower degree or the higher degree. This is how you got to understand how peace works. Because you thinking like, I'm going to be a nigga's peace or I'm going to be a woman's peace. You don't understand the mechanics of peace. There's degrees to that shit. There's the lower levels of peace, which is neutrality, which is the state of neutrality or the aspect of avoidance or living through their own cycles of their hell, or living through in their aspects of their own fucking purgatory. And then there's the true war that happens before them to come into their true aspects of peace. See, you can be sitting inside of your space and you can be creating based on peace. Your house, your whole space is based on peace. You created your altars. Everything in your space is based on peace. You've literally changed the whole entire energetic frequency of that space is based on peace. Now, you've had a conversation about the moves to achieving peace, but they have not assessed the internal steps of peace. That standard, the structure, the stability. You went through your standard, your structure, your stability, your disciplines into living in peace, becoming peace. See, they're used to moving into the avoidance of neutrality based on the definition of peace. So now you're doing your work. You're doing your work. You keeping shit clean. You doing your shit. They're not used to that. They're used to those definitions being, okay, they're used to that being given to them as peace. But since it has to stay on the rhythm of their conflict. Because now the lack mentality, they'll always say this. And I've said we'll say these things all the time, but like, you're not used to this, you're not used to that, you're not used to this. This is different, and this is different. But if you're doing it from a space of lack, you don't take the assessment. It's always, because it's always on some shit like I always do. I'm used to doing this, and I'm not used to. But when you're doing it from a point of assessment, this is the key. You're doing it from a point of assessing, you'll be like, I got to get used to that. Because until I learned to submit to myself, I never knew why I wouldn't get something, why I never could accept something like that. That's usually what it boils down to. It's based on that submission with yourself. The thing that you get inside your space, that infatuation, that fear of exposure, that fear of submitting to yourself to really learn why that keeps coming into your space, is the same thing that when shit come into your space, you get excited as a little kid, ooh, attention, and then you keep trying to go towards it. That's how you get stuck, because you haven't submitted to that aspect of yourself yet. Because when it comes into reality, it's like most of the things that are people that are really on that level, that's a natural part of their process. You ain't there. It's automatic. It's an automatic. It's based on their automatic process. With or without you being there, they're going to do that. See, that's when you understand the aspects of the degrees of peace, versus that purgatory. With or without you being present, they would do that same thing. See, this is when you motherfuckers start taking that shit personally. That's when motherfuckers start taking that shit personally. You upset because shorty is, you upset because he out there wilding and shit after 6 months in a relationship. That nigga would have done that shit anyway. You mad because 6 months later down the line, she out there wilding in a relationship. She was going to do that shit anyway. That's her. That is her. That is what she is. That is what she defines as peace. She needs you to react to that, because in that reaction, she'll feel like, okay, cool. Because in that chaotic sense of what they're calling what they do, they need somebody because they're used to somebody shutting them down. They're used to pressure keeping them pushed down. They're used to that pressure. See, they don't understand. They've been given a space. They've never been given a space or provided a space. We talk about these seats. They've never been given a space provided to them inside of their space that was based on the true nurturing of anything. The nurturing of anything that was to teach them to cultivate higher aspects. So their pride always kicks in right at the right moment. Look, it's been X amount of months. It's been X amount of days. It's been this, and this, and this happening. Nothing's changing, or this isn't happening or this isn't being culminated. I'm not getting this, so you're not getting this. And then you'll feel some type of way. I know I used to feel some type of way. Man, bitch, arguments and shit for no fucking reason. But then I started looking at that shit with myself. I was like, and then this when the moment hit, the aha moment where I'll be like, I've been reacting to this shit the entire time. What have I really been doing? In reality, I really do not need nothing from this person in this breakdown, in this sequence. I really don't need anything from this person that I cannot give to myself, that I cannot provide to myself or nurture within inside of myself. I really do not want anything from this person. I didn't, when I go into this space, I don't want anything from anyone. I don't want anything from anyone. But my wants based on certain needs that I was not meeting with myself, that's what created the falsehood of entitlement. So I had to check my conversation. Not with them, but with myself first. Because I had to look at my conversations, and my conversations, they had the remnants of entitlement. You feel me? My conversations had the remnants of entitlement within them. That's the only way that they can project entitlement into the space, is because what I was speaking from, the energetic tone that I'm using was still unassessed. It was still had the entitlements to it. It still had the expectations to it because of the space that I see, how I aligned myself into that space. So them coming into the space was necessary for me to shift out of that space. It was necessary for me to shift out of that space because I kept staying in that space. I knew I was there too damn long. I told myself it was done. I told myself I needed to, but I got there was certain aspects inside of that space that became comfortable because it meant, because then I had that, you had that falsehood with yourself. You're like, well, I can keep doing this or this and this, and then it really wouldn't matter until this comes along. But you got to understand, you can't come into alignment until you build the containment for it. If I have not built a structure, whether it could be a fucking pamphlet, it can be a fucking file on your laptop. But until I write that out, until I build that, until I create that and give it a shape and a form and encode this shit, no matter what, that energy is not going to hit that. It won't hit that point. So I can't use it. It becomes useless. It's a demo tape, but niggas don't use demo tapes. I'm still trying to hold on to a demo tape when they got whole fucking CDs now, nigga. You still, now I'm push my demo. You still trying to push a demo with a body of work where now they have streaming service where you can upload your own shit. See, more work. Faith without the work is dead. You can say I'm gonna keep sending. You can say you're gonna keep sending out your demo tape and your demo CD and all that shit out to fucking all the major record companies and shit. And you can keep getting mad that every time you hear somebody else's new song on the radio or a new song on Spotify, Tidal, whatever streaming service, you can be mad at that, or you can look at it as the opportunity. Why do I keep getting triggered by these niggas that have nothing to fucking talk about on the fucking interwebs? What am I mad at? What do they have that I do not have? I got talent. I got talent. All this time this aspect of time I need to check. I need to check my time. I need to check how I'm defining my time. Because if I'm defining my time based on the old of this much time into this product gives me this amount of worth. That's the old formula of the old paradigm. Because it's that formula has been revised. Because now, if I have X amount of time and all I got to do is go run some loops, or I know somebody that makes beats as this example, then I know I can say some shit on the track. Then I just put out, instead of me making a demo tape of 5 songs and mailing this bitch out, or trying to go shop this shit in Walmart parking lots and Costco parking lots, hey, buy my album, grab these 5 songs, support a local artist. I could literally take free time in my day, sit at the house, record 10 songs every Saturday or whatever day in this space. I'm gonna break down what this example means. Do 10 songs. Let's say I got a nice little part-time gig. That means when I'm sitting at the house, when I get home, the song was in my mind the entire time. 5 songs a day. 5, 10, no. Let's do 5. Let's do 10 songs. And let's say you can knock out 10 songs a day. 10 songs a day. That's 300 songs a month. 10 songs a day, that's 300 songs a month. Once you got the process down, that's 10 songs. If you can produce 10 songs, that means write out 10 songs. And then let's say every week, every Saturday, you release 10. You release 10. That's what, 40 songs a month that you're releasing? And now you getting used to the process because you writing up 10 songs a day in that free time in that process. So now you got 40 songs going out a month. 40 songs going out a month. Within that 6 months, let's say 3 of them songs hit. See, the key of you coming into the alignment with yourself, you must do this work. Because the moment that it hits and you ain't got nothing to go behind it, you lose the momentum. It's you that loses. We lose momentum all the fucking time. Because right behind it, you should have something behind it. If you ready, you never got to you got what's next behind it. But if you're afraid to even make the plan for the process to jump into that shit, then what do you think's gonna happen? What do you think's happening? That's what's stopping. That's what gets you stopped with a lot of shit. Because you ain't got nothing behind what you're trying so hard to push this image of yourself because you ain't got nothing behind it. You trying so hard to keep this light version of yourself up because those depths is something that's dark and is deadly. And that's what bolsters your pride. That's what's bolstering your pride. If motherfuckers agree with that, so that's why you got to think about your entire structure of your space. Ain't nobody pushing you for a reason. Ain't nobody supporting you for a reason. Because you ain't even supporting yourself. You're not even supporting the authenticity within inside of your true self. They support the bolstering of those demons that you ain't dealing with. So then you sitting there, but my life should. Who said? I'm 30. I'm 30 plus years old, and my life should be here. No. Now, if you're doing the work, I always talk about the aspect of time served. You going off time served? You going off time served don't work. Sorry. Time served don't mean shit. You're going off the first time that you did it, the second time that you did it, the third time that you did it. You're confusing quality with quantity with yourself. And then you getting upset. Now you mad at motherfuckers because you feel like you wasted your best years. The healing process stops the aging process. So you can't waste anything. You just got to shed this shit. It don't matter where you at, where are you starting. This is what I mean by the aspect of this shit being destructive, because you really got to start. You really got to take the assessment. How far are you willing to go? You get stuck every time you don't honor the thought. One example for me, like one of the biggest examples for me, top of the year, got a lot of opportunities coming up. Hell, in the last couple of weeks, great opportunities have hit the table. Just in like pure being mused. Shit faster and faster and faster. Hell, I'm seeing the overlay of shit happening. Like it's like, imagine having a conversation that you've been having forever. Visualize having a conversation that you've been having forever. That means you've been having this conversation over and over and over again. This conversation was under and backmasked under every conversation you had in a relationship, every time you had that feeling, every time you were at a job, and all of those things to that narrative. Always back there in the underground. You wanted to say it. You wish that you said it. And the thing you wanted to say in every relationship, things you wanted to say in every friendship. It was something that would have changed the entire narrative. If you had said it, it would have changed the entire course of action if you said it. But you are afraid to say it because of the regret, because of the guilt, because of the doubt, because of the abandonment, because of the wound. Now imagine saying it. Imagine being present when you say it. Imagine that shit. You say no instead of yes one good time. All the times you wish you would have said no, you wish you would have said no, you kept saying yes. And then that one time that you end up saying yes. Yes, I do mind. That's your opening. See that moment right there? That's the moment that's gonna make you uncomfortable as fuck. That telling the truth and stop omitting shit, that's what's gonna change the narrative. It's going to show you the true aspects of that space, without that space was created. You will stop seeing it for what you wanted it to be and start seeing it for what it is. Because everything after that becomes the projection. You broke it. Are you willing to go through the process of the buying power with yourself and seeing what you broke and what you now own? That becomes that key. See, this becomes in that shedding process when you're looking at yourself, dealing with yourself, facing with yourself, having that conversation with yourself. Because you're like, oh shit, my life is. That's what it was. You keep hearing ever since what happened to you when you were little, all you've ever heard was no. So to counterbalance the no, you always said yes. But just like you never had a reason to the yes, just because you never put a reason to the yes other than you're a good person, some surface level bullshit. The answer to your yes was some surface level bullshit. Let's just be honest. So the answer to the no was some deep shit. Remember, as above, so below. As within, as without. Was in correspondence. That's how it stayed in balance. That's how it stayed in alignment. So in the inside, that deep infernal no, that first no, or whatever was said to you, or whatever triggered you in that point, to keep that in balance, it has to stay depth. So you got to stay on the surface. So you can't get any deeper. So you can't ask the real question to yourself. You can't have the real conversation. That family secret, you can't have a conversation. You got a whole family secret that involves you being the victim of the family secret. Your moms, your siblings, and your mother have two different stories of the secret, but you suffer with the secret. So every single day of your life, now you want to sit there and you're trying to prove to both of them that you are more valuable than the person that hurt you. And you'll do that shit for the rest of your damn life. That shit happens all the fucking time. You're going to sit here in the narrative that your mother gave you about men because of your dad, because your dad did not live up to something that your mother wanted. Now you got that same narrative in your mind, because now you don't like your mother because your father is telling you some things, and whether it's separate as a tug of war, your father been telling you the truth the entire time, your mom been lying. Now you upset. Now you trying to prove against your moms. Now it's just more fuel to the flame. Nothing's been de-escalated. See, the staying in this high state of emotion with yourself is because you have not practiced any type of resolution. You have no resolve with yourself. That unresolved aspect with the side of yourself got you in an unresolved with the world. It got you in conflict with the world. It got you ready to fight with the world. It got you wanting to argue with the world. It got you not de-escalating shit in your life. All of your shit in your life got to stay in a high state of stimulation. So now you mad because you weren't getting the stimulation you feel that you're entitled to, because you lack giving that to yourself on a mental level, or you lack giving yourself to that on that psychological level, because that involves somebody coming in and actually sitting there with you and you having to be honest. I've talked about that vulnerability before. There's a difference between exposure and vulnerability. Exposure are the first steps to vulnerability. Vulnerability. I can't say words. So now you got to look at yourself like, man, but my life is supposed to be, I was supposed to be here when I turned this age. Who said? No one in your family reached that point at that age. So that's a lie automatically to yourself. Who told you this lie? Every time that your mom said, you got a chance that we didn't have, you better take it. Or your grandmother said the same shit to your mother, but had no backup behind it. You said the same shit to your daughter. Your daughter said the same shit to her daughter. Then your son said that to this person, and y'all just kept going down the line. And you kept, but then this is the crazy part about the sequence. You got something that was a little bit better than what your mom used to have. Because on the other side of that spectrum, that nigga was being told the same shit. They were being told the same exact shit. So when they met you and you met them, that's what happened. The infatuation to the same thought process, the same move, but different steps. See, we got to start assessing the steps to your shit, your life. You got to understand the steps of your life. Them moves don't mean shit if there's no steps behind them. If my standard was based in pride, when my stability was based in arrogance, when my structure was based in other motherfuckers being incompetent and me being intellectually sound, I built a world based on that. But I noticed at the end of every fiscal year, it was the same fucking shit. I'm sitting there, end of the year, I'm nowhere closer to where I believed that I was entitled. I'm nowhere closer to where I believed I was entitled. If anything, I'm in more emotional debt at the end of the year because I didn't build, I planned no structure, nothing. I'm looking like, what the fuck? I'm looking like I wasted time the entire fucking year because I'm not going back and assessing. This is when y'all look at, this is like motherfuckers look at taxes based on benefit. Remember, all this shit is synonymous to your shadow and how you create your space. Niggas don't do assessments. Niggas don't do assessing. They go get tax refunds. That tax refund gonna get us back in the game. You doing it to yourself. Nobody's doing it to you. Even if somebody sits there and tells you, like, hey, yo, like, when you get your taxes, like, what you gonna do with them? Oh, this year with my taxes, I'ma save them. I'ma save them this year. Okay. You ain't define that energy. Because the same demons that you fed last year with that tax money gonna need to be fed this year. Same demons. Same shit gotta be fed this year. And you wonder, why is it always the same? You know why. Same demons. And you keep feeding them. And then you get mad because when motherfucker checks you on feeding that same bullshit, now you upset and mad. Well, if you gave me this, and this, bitch, did you think about it? Did you think about it? That's been your excuse the entire time. You've been using that excuse and it worked with other. You're now using the excuse of the other niggas. You now using the excuse of the other bitches. Because you stuck on that spec. Now you got to face yourself. That's who you've been the entire time. So now you go back and forth with yourself. We talked about it last week. Like, you're going back and forth with yourself in the space to everything that you're doing inside of your space. You're doing the same shit. And you're like, why is my life not getting any better? Why is my life not changing? Because you're not doing the work. You're not doing the work. You're not doing the internal work. You're not facing yourself. You're not taking the assessment. You're not learning the lessons. You're not doing what you're supposed to. You're not doing what it is that you're supposed to be doing in the aspects of going internally. You're not doing it. You've made your entire life based on not doing the work. All this credibility is surface level shit. All of this shit is to boost pride, to bolster pride, to boost your insecurity and lower your immune system. That's what y'all doing. You're stuck in a space with yourself where you are boosting your insecurity and lowering your immunity. You're boosting your pride and you're a detriment to your power. You're boosting the reaction and you're losing respect. You're boosting the lust narrative for yourself, but you see how you stay locked in the lower degrees of yourself? You stay locked in the lower degrees, so you keep projecting from the lower degrees. Now you said, my life is not the way I wanted it to be. You keep producing from the lower degrees. Everything that you want is not going to be inside of your comfort zone. So that ceiling that you put up, it's time to break it. What would you like to do? You want to stay the same? Go ahead. By all means, keep doing what you've been doing, and you'll keep receiving what you've been receiving. You'll keep being mad at motherfuckers, upset at motherfuckers. You're going to keep calling me an asshole, keep calling me all types of shit. Go ahead, keep doing what the fuck you doing. It don't pay me no never mind. But eventually, and that's something else I wanted to say. You don't even be mad at the nigga that you don't even be mad at the motherfucker you mad at when they're right. What's showing up is the wound that is present based on that person being right. It's kind of like when you think about all the voices that go on inside of your head and you don't want to listen to them because they sound like your grandma. They sound like it's an ancestor, but it sounds like your mother and you don't have a relationship with your mother. But the reason that the ancestor came through, that spirit came through and talking through your mother's voice is because in order to understand that lesson, they're letting you know you got to have a conversation with your mother. That's what the fuck be happening to y'all in these fucking relationships and at your jobs. Because you saw that one person at your job, because you saw the woman that's at your job, the manager that's at your job, and she's always working in all of these aspects. She's working at the job. The manager at the job. I remember there was a manager at my job. Her name was Laura Lee. Cool as shit. Like, and I remember like everybody would look at her and be like, she works all the time. And I remember like somebody was like, she works all the time. She's chosen that path. What triggers people about choosing their path is when they see somebody on that path doing that work, and then you cannot see yourself. You've never seen yourself engulfed and involved in anything. You haven't. That's the process of engulfing yourself into your works. There's a difference between if I was sitting here, like earlier on, I kept saying the mantra in my earlier lectures, there's no going back. Not only would I say it on the lecture, I would say that I would say that shit every fucking day. There's no going back. After watching a Bobby Hemmett lecture, when he said you don't monetize this shit, and I really understood what the fuck that meant, and it changed the narrative for myself, I was like, everything that I'm becoming abundant in is I need an infrastructure. I need a base. And I got hit with that test during when the COVID shit hit, when I decided to make this shit public, because I already been doing it privately. Now I wanted to make it public and change the aspect to expand. I got hit during the COVID thing with the unemployment checks. And all of my unemployment checks went into investing into my brand, my platform, everything that I'm doing. That was my offering to the ancestors because I was doing more of the work. That was my offering into the new aspects of myself. In order for you to understand this, you got to stop investing into the old aspects of yourself. The old offerings only bring you the old shit. So I had to start investing into the new practice of myself, the new focus of myself, the new alignment of myself, that higher aspect of myself, as I'm reinstating these relationships. See, you're going to keep repeating it, but as you go higher into it, it's based on what you built. It's kind of like, think about this. You can literally say, okay, cool, you've had multiple kids or whatever, or you have multiple relationships or whatever it is. And you will always apply the same mechanics and get the same shit. Until that one moment where you're like, you know what? There's that one breaking moment for yourself. You're like, you know what? I want to sit back and I want to lose weight. So I'm going to spend the next year losing weight. So now you spend the next year losing weight. You spend the next year getting in shape. You spend the next year eating better. So that whole period go by. You ain't around nobody. You're in a state of, you in the hermit phase, the empress phase. You in the empress, you in that darkness with yourself. So then the next year pops up. And you staying stuck to the process. Now you noticing that all the money that you invested in all that other food, you've shifted that money. You've redefined this money into your health. So all of these energetic spaces, now you have opportunities based on health. Fuck my hat. I don't care no more. You got all of these new opportunities based on health. You see how you changed the narrative. You changed your space. Because now you got all these opportunities based on health. That you shedding, you coming into that new space. So now you keep that shit going. So now you're investing more into your health. So now you're becoming more efficient And where you understand, let's use the example, where you understand exactly how long it take you. Like, let's say the first time you started going on your health journey, you were working out, doing your health, working out and shit. The first time when I started doing it, for me it was easier because I already knew how to cook. I knew how to put together meal plan. So the next lesson for me was, let me understand how to create meal plans. I don't do the meal plans anymore. I'm outside of that stage because now I'm in it. Basically, you're evolving to something less and less and less. That takes less and less and less work in the physical because you are already aligned to becoming automatic on that process. So now everything that you do in the intention is already set. Now build your space. So now I went from cooking all of these different meals during these certain times of the day to meal preps and meal plans to now I intermediate fast. There's no food goes in my body before 12 o'clock. There's nothing that really goes in my body. Now this is like after a lecture, I decide to treat myself to ice cream or some shit, whatever, to spoil myself. There's nothing that goes in my body after 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Now that I've mastered this, I know that some of my ancestors, automatically, I know that most of my ancestors, my grandmother, egg rolls, Chinese food, my cousin, pizza. There's certain things that I know I'm going to ingest at a certain time. But I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I've become efficient. My body, I drink mostly water. Water naturally keeps the body flush. So I'm not, see that efficiency is you needing to require more, you require less. You require less. And that less in this sense is more concentrated. So the less that you receive is concentrated. That means that shit lasts longer. That means that shit can expand. That shit can go longer. Rather than your old complex of where it was less up here and more down here. Now you got more moves to make and less steps. You got more moves to make. You can make more moves, but you can make less steps. See, that's the process. See, now I can make more moves. I can make less moves because I understand the steps. My steps set up the move. Like I can make, instead of me making 3 steps, like to make 20 moves, I had to make 20 different steps. Now I'm inside of a process to where I make 3 steps, and those 3 steps can allot me 30 moves. Because I'm thinking about the moves I'm thinking through the steps before I even make the moves. That's the efficiency. That's you sitting in that Godhead space. Because the God is constantly creating. My inner child is the natural creation. God is constantly creating. The path of my heart is constantly putting in the feeling in everything that I create. So it's creating the body of what I needed to create. So naturally in the ethers, naturally in my spiritual practice, everything that I do in the spiritual aspect through the intent naturally falls in line. But that's after shedding the layers. And still shed layers. Because as you inside of this space, you still got, as long as you down here, you picking up debris. As long as you interact now, you picking up debris, you picking up all types of bullshit. So you're always going to have to shed the layers. So stop thinking like, well, I can stop. No, there is no stop. This is what you are. Those same elements that your grandmother used to do, your great grandmother, the same routines that they used to live by and die by, when it came to all of that shit that became superstition, those were the rituals. See, the rituals are done automatically. The repetition is the ritual. The symbol is the ritual. The triggering point, that's the ritual. So me waking up 4:30, that's my trigger point. That forces me to get out of bed. That's the trigger. The symbolism of what it means that I'm taking on the darkness. The repetition is Monday through, I do this this same process with the intent set in that space in order for me to build. So on top of that process, now that I've laid out this new groundwork, now I can build on top of it. See, you can't, y'all trying to build on the old foundation. I can't build on the old foundation. It doesn't exist anymore. This new grid work, this new grid plan, that's what I've built on. So then when you look at the examples of my works, it's simply like this, the last 3 years in themselves, the amount of work that I've done in the last 3 years when it comes to the podcast and growing through transitions to the podcast. In 2019, I started doing the YouTube channel. I started becoming more and more public, getting used to public speaking, the teaching aspect, really being in front of the public space. I've done all of these aspects to learn the different points that I needed to learn, to not get flustered, to not lose focus, to know how to pick up and look when I'm looking at comments and chats through a chat room and learn how to speak, because I knew that there is a perception of me, there is an event of me in a space. I just shifted some shit. There's a perspective of me that is the speaker. So I must become the elements of that speaker in this space in order to align to that space. In order for me to be the teacher, I must be the student in this space to align to that space. You got to do that fucking work. There's a difference between being somebody that can, there's a difference between being a nigga that drops off babies and being a father. There's a difference between being a bitch that can have a bunch of kids around them all the times and being that mother. There's a difference in between you saying, ooh, I'm a good person, I'm a good catch, and being in that union with yourself. There's a difference. And understanding that difference is between those degrees of that pride that you want to hold on to and between the degrees of that detriment that you stuck on. Well, I guess I'll do this for, okay, cool, that's nice. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. I promise. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. I promise. Keep doing it. Sure. It ain't worked yet. It ain't worked yet. It ain't worked yet. But it's just, it ain't me. Who the fuck is it then? Because the elements of why it don't work are with you. The thought process of why it ain't happening is with you, not with them. They are just living out the program, or they're just living out the orders to the mission that you set up, the program that you put into play. Because you have a definition in your mind, and until you deal with that definition that you have in your mind for that, you will not get any more than that. That's why I made that post. That's why I made that post probably like 15, like right before I came off, like an hour before I went live. I was like, the job that you got, that's not going to be your financial freedom, because that's not how you defined it. Because you got to have that challenge to your pride. If you don't want to challenge that, if you don't want to challenge those aspects of pride with yourself, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I know what I know what to tell you. I know how to guide you. I know how to move you. I know. But if the spirit say don't tell them, I'm not telling you. They got to come up. The one thing they got to come up. One thing that was hard for me was like, they got to come up. The hardest thing for me was I was always trying to bring motherfuckers up, but I wasn't allowed them to take the steps themselves. That's what I kept doing. Then I stopped doing it. Then everybody said I was a monster. Then I stopped doing it. And everybody said I was a monster, an asshole. I'm this horrible person because I wasn't giving in anymore. And then I had to learn the difference between doing it based on avoidance and doing it based on the true aspects with myself. See, there's lessons that you're going to learn within those aspects. Because you can sit there all day, be sitting there with yourself and be like, well, everybody think I'm an asshole, but they don't understand I got boundaries now. Meanwhile, you wondering why everything has stopped in your life, because then you got to realize that a boundary is a filtering system. With a boundary, there's a filtration. With a barrier, don't shit come through. See, due to your hard up life and the shit that you've been through with yourself, you got a barrier put up. You ain't got a barrier spell put into play. And that's what's holding you back. It's time to let that barrier down. It's time to let that barrier down. You keep doing the same shit every damn week, man. My life is supposed to be here now. I'm supposed to be happy now. That's nice. That ain't true. Are you doing the work to match that? This is what I mean by asking these honest questions. Speaking of questions, if you're new, this is our Q&A period. Our question and answer period. If you know somebody that needs some tough fatherly love, you know they need that. They ain't never had that experience in their life. Go ahead and get them and tell them to tune on in, because this is the Q&A period. Also, this is the reading. I do the readings, donation-based readings. The link is up at the top. The question does not have to be about anything in pertaining to the topic of tonight. Anything that comes to your mind question-wise, and you would like to get that question answered, or you would like to get a reading done. I'm about to do a little collective reading because I got my oracle cards over here real quick. But yeah, this is that Q&A period, because I want to let y'all understand that I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best because I desire myself to be the fucking best. And I know I had to be honest in order to become the fucking. I had to be honest with myself in understanding that my willingness had to come from a space of it cannot no longer come from lack. Me wanting to be something greater had to stop coming from the point of lack. That's what you got. This is what we got to understand. When you're taking this dive into your darkness, you're assessing your lack. You're popping the latches to your life. You're popping the latches. You're changing yourself. You're becoming something better. You made this decision up to this point. What you do from this point, that is on you. All I can do is guide. All we can do is guide, just truly guide you, teach you how to cleanse, give you the keys and give you methodologies. For me being a occult therapist, I go a little bit deeper. I'm more to the assessor type, like the session. Like we sit there, have a conversation, and I'm like, all right. And I show you how to connect the dots. That's what I do as the occult therapist. But the main key to you doing this shit is you're gonna have to swallow that pride. The only thing that's stopping you is you saying that you don't have what you need to do it. That's what's fucking you up. Because there's shit here too in that position. You just gotta be honest with yourself. Like, I use an example. With me, if you come to me for services, like especially for the consultation, the psychoanalysis shadow consultation is $125. It's 2 hours minimum. And when you leave, because what it entails is a lot. We go through a lot in that 2 hour session. It is an intense session. There are a lot of NLP techniques and therapy techniques that I do involve in that session for you to sit there. But if you can come to me, I've had people that come to me and be like, hey, I really want to book that session with you. But I'm like, all right, cool. At 60, 40, I'll fluctuate and change the price. The reason that I set that price is because it weeds out the ones that are really ready to do the work. That is what this is what has been brought to me for my practice of what I do. Everybody has their own way of weeding niggas out. Mine is more direct into that approach based on the business sense from the masculine aspect, because this is how I'm using my basis of what I was learning, making it more efficient. Like as the example, if you ain't got the money for the brick, there's no discount. I can front you to work, but you still got to pay. These are points and mentalities from my earlier life in this cycle and past lives that I've learned to use in this space. That's what you're doing when it comes to the transmutation. I've learned how to make it honorable. I've learned how to make it part of the righteous path. I've learned how to make that a part of my righteousness. I've learned to recreate the degrees of my space, of my energy, in order for me to accept and sit in every fucking position. That's the work. That's the healing process. Because after the healing becomes transmutation. After that first level of transmutations, there's more healing. After that next level of healings, there's more transmutations. After these first levels of enlightenment and darkness and enlightenment and darkness, because you got to go to the dark before it becomes enlightenment, some more shit light up until you come to the point of a union with yourself, and then you start shifting through these processes. But you got to do the work. Hola. You got to do the work. You got to do this work. There's no skipping these steps. Stop telling yourself, stop going, I'm going to skip the steps because somebody said I can skip this step and that. Okay. You can skip the step, but you will have to go back to that step. That step's going to come up. Period. I remember myself trying to skip steps. Shit just come up in a different form, even bigger. But yeah, as I said before, just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, Q&A, questions, answers, readings. We are doing donation-based readings. I'm about to pull, because them cards are talking to me over there. I'm about to pull like 3 oracle cards and speak on them real quick. This is for the energy in the past, the present, the future, all in the same continuum. So everybody that was here, everybody left the mark. Everybody that came on left the mark. Everybody that came that's going to come after leaves the mark. And everybody that's here right now is leaving an energetic imprint. I speak to all those streams. That's how we do that. That is a level of transmutation. That is sitting in that space with that. That's sitting in that space of that psychomancy with yourself. All right, cool. Let me pull these cards real quick. Ooh, child. But I do appreciate you guys for stopping through. I feel there's a lot of new energies in the room. Some energy that have been rocking since the beginning. I feel the new energies in the room. Welcome. We do this every Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come get your fill. Step into class. If it triggers you, good. That means you need to be triggered. If I trigger you, yes, that's the objective. If it makes you feel some type of way, that was the objective. If it makes you start thinking about yourself, that was the objective. My objective is to remain present so that you become present. Speaking about becoming present, We're looking at the aspects of stretching, 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 stretching. We see the autumn leaves and the fall leaves and all the autumn leaves. It's time to stretch. You sitting in that space right now, you're looking at, stretching past your comfort zone. It's time to stretch out of the shell. I'm hearing in that space I'm hearing in this space of you've done this, you've been in this space, whether it be a place. I'm feeling like the aspect of where you've been at. How does a live reading work? A live reading is up here at the top. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put it down here too. At right here. Up here at the top, you hit my Cash App link. They're donation based. So like whatever you feel that you can give, this work, whatever you feel the worth of the information is going to come out is what you put out to that. You drop it up there at the top, hit the Cash App link, bling, bling, bling. Once you do it, I'm going to see it because my phone's sitting right beside me. Once you do it, let me know that you dropped it. Let me know that you dropped it. And then we build through your reading. We do a live reading, general energy. We just pull into your energy. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say, I want you to think about, I want you to hold that question inside of your mind. I want you to hold it for about 3 seconds. I want you taking one deep breath and hold that deep breath for 10 seconds and release it. And then we'll start to read. Ooh, ooh, ooh. But while you are deciding, I'm going to knock out, yes. We're looking at the aspects of stretching. Stretching those legs. I'm sensing strength. It's time to stretch those legs. It's time to stretch those muscles. You've been laying stagnant and dormant for a while now. You've been waiting, and now that you're inside of this space, before you even take the step, you need to stretch first. There's a lot of moves coming onto the table. A lot of shit coming to the surface while you're that stretching. While you're now stretching outside of your comfort zone. While you're now stretching outside of that space with yourself. Now you're stretching out. There's going to be a lot of things coming to the surface. Here's the thing. They're not coming to the surface. They've always been on the surface. It's just that because think about it like this. If you don't stretch and you keep yourself in a state of constriction, you can't see certain parts of yourself. So if you now stretching your arm out, and I'm like, oh, I got a tattoo there. That tattoo's always been present with you. This has always been present with you. You just haven't been able to see it because you've been in that state of constriction. It's time to assess these things that are sitting on the surface. Heard. Hello, modern day sage. It's funny how everybody got the other different names. All right, cool. All right. I'm gonna put y'all hold that anything we talk about that mock there. Cool. All right, boom. We're gonna do this quick. I'm feeling oracle-ish. So we're gonna pull another oracle off top. The modern day sage, I just got your cash up. I'm about to start it now. Are you back? Are you in? Okay, the first two cards that pulled off for you were patterns in the center. Patterns and center. Patterns. Cool. Patterns and center, or the century. We're looking at the aspects of your patterns. There's some patterns that you have. There's some patterns that are stopping you from getting to that center point. centering yourself. There's some patterns that are based on your old century, the old centuries of yourself, the new growth in yourself. It's time to assess those patterns. As we look at that Six of Cups, the Six of Cups represents pleasure. The Six of Cups represents the aspects of the Lord of that pleasure. The reason that you're stuck inside of those patterns, the reason that you're in those patterns and you stay with those patterns is because they're giving you this sense of pleasure. It's this pleasuring. It's like, okay, cool. But one thing that you're going to learn is like, whenever I talk about comfort is simply reaction. So when we think about pleasure, it's simply the magnifying of those reactions. So based on that old pattern, as we look at the aspect, it's the aspect of a relationship. We look at our relationship, harmony, the aspect of the lovers. There's a pattern that just keeps coming up. There's this pattern that keeps coming up. This is the repeat of that. You keep going back to it. All of a sudden, what you're looking at right now is you're looking at it as that love interest, the love that you're looking at inside of that space for yourself, based on this old pattern, this love that you're reaching, the pleasure that you're reaching, the comfort that you're in, this comfort that keeps you out of your center, it's only based on because it's a familiar relationship. I'm also seeing it's time to start the relationship that you need to relationship that you need to familiarize yourself with will be found in that Eight of Pentacles. Prudence is because now we're seeing that because of the current relationship, this cycle, these patterns with these relationships, whether it be the friendships, whether it's being the aspects that used to bring you pleasure, it's on the other end of that relationship of the imbalance. It's like, I can't see myself without that. You've seen yourself so long with that. So you've seen yourself with that for so long that now you're looking at like, what will I look like without it? And that's the exposure. That's what brings up that sense of prudence. Maybe I'll wait a little bit longer. Maybe it'll get better. Nah. What we're looking at is the Knight of Swords. You've known this decision, the Knight of Swords. You've known what decision you needed to make for a while now. You've known exactly you've known what decision you needed to make for a while now. You've known what decision it is that you needed to make. The Knight of Swords represents the aspects of haste. So a lot of times when we think based on a decision, based on the prudence of, oh my God, this is not going to be like what I'm going to do without it, we tend to heed the haste or heed in making a decision. Here's the thing. You've already made the decision. The only thing left now is to live in the thoughts of that decision. That's brought up in that Empress. The Empress represents the Empress is the feminine version of the Hermit. It's time to sit down and assess. It's time for that good old sit down and that assessment with yourself. Because a lot of times our old patterns, we're not looking at our patterns, we're not taking our tests to catch ourselves. So then automatically, even if it's not the same person or the same job or the same, I'm sensing a person. Even if it's not the same person, it's the same archetype of energy that is now housed in that shadow. So now you're sitting with that Empress. The Empress represents the aspects of assessing that throne. It's time to sit and look at what you're creating. Are you creating based through lack? Are you creating based through lack? Or are you creating through the aspects of truly creating through imitation? Because when you're creating through lack, you create through imitation. It's imitation. That means the relationship. That means every relationship is supposed to be the best relationship ever, but it's based on the imitation of lack of something that you're lacking. Or, as we look at the Seven of Cups, the illusionary success. As I'm seeing the Empress, the prudence, the hastiness, the pleasure, the pattern, you losing that center with yourself, coming into that center with yourself. It's all based on the illusionary forms of success. This gets even deeper because now as you're sitting in this point of assessment, Now it's time for you to look back at your patterns and where you learned where you learned how to graft the successful relation, what a successful relationship looked like, where you learned to graft and define what a successful relationship will look like, whether the relationship be with money, the relationship be with a mate, the relationship be with your friends, family, job, whatever it is. This time is to understand that everything that's inside of your space based on the pattern all line up in that side of that relationship. I'm gonna pull one more card. Once again, the Knight of Wands represents the aspects of that decision, that fire, that energy. You know exactly what decision you need to make. You know exactly what decision you need to make. And you know that you should have made it. You already made the decision. That's the key. You already made the decision. Now you have to sit with that decision. There's no going back. There's only going forward. Everything that you need will be in front of you. Or what you like, everything that you need will be in front of you. The only thing that you need to know is everything that you know at this moment is what you need to know. Everything else outside of that, when we think about illusionary success, especially with success falling and finding our center, everything outside of that shit is what you're going to project into it. So let's go back to when I talked about that prudence card. Talking about aspect of, I don't know what to do outside of this. Yes, you do. Sit down with yourself. Assess yourself. Your pattern is what leads you back to this space every single time. It's time to assess those patterns. Real time to assess those patterns. Because that's what, and then I'm also reading the aspects of perception. That old perception based on that illusionary success, it never worked. I'm going to be honest, I'm hearing it never worked. The only reason that it worked is because you were willing to bypass certain patterns. But now you're in a space where you're not ready. Those patterns have come to a cease and come to a halt. Whew. All right, we back. We good. Cool. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I thank you for stopping through. No problem, no problem, no problem. Thank you and much gratitude to you. You let this information sit. Let it sizzle in your spirit. Let it shed. It's time to shed. It's time to shed. It's time to shed. But yes. Yes, what is your question? I may have one answer. Hey. Blood on the leaves, chicken on the trees. Hey. I totally agree with what you were saying because I have been sitting with myself in
myself this regards. I have made a decision, but it's just sitting with myself. That would be a big moment. Wait, but is it just sitting with myself and that will bring movement?
See, there's a key. I thank you for that question. Key when it comes to you when you're sitting with yourself. Sitting too long with yourself creates the points of being stagnant. So when you're sitting with yourself, as we just said, with aspects of the movement inside of your space, sitting with yourself is the intention set to what movement you make next. The reason that you're able to sit with yourself now is because everything's been shut away. So one thing that you have to ask yourself is, my decision, now I gotta let me the key with the aspects of the movement is behind the movement are the steps. Behind the movement are the steps. So like if once you make a decision, there's steps to be made behind those movements. So it can be some, I'll use that like an example. Let's say you're going down the memory lane, you're going down the lane of like really getting intimate with yourself and no understanding yourself. What would be your first step in the aspects of getting intimate with yourself? That means that first step would be acknowledging the things that I do not really like, or the things that I've rejected, the things that I really don't agree with myself about. The next step would be taking accountability. That means going into the acceptance of these aspects of myself and seeing where I learned these behaviors. Then the next step would be the apologizing to myself for not knowing what you knew now and how you move forward. That creates the movement, which in this case would be the thanking. Thank you for that means actually inside of that space, based on this decision, now you're going to have motherfuckers that are going to come up that are still going to hit you with the old aspects of yourself. That means they're going to say shit based on the old aspects of yourself, do shit, whatever, do everything into that narrative. The new movement becomes the thank you. So if somebody says something, let's say somebody say, you got a big ass head or some shit like that, or like things of that nature, or you need to go to the gym. Things of that nature. That new movement would be saying thank you to them. Thank you for bringing that up. I've been working on that. That's something that I needed. Everything that we do when we make decisions, we got to assess the steps into our mind before we make the move. It don't matter what move you make until you assess those steps up here. That standard, that stability, that standard, the standards within the shadow, the stability of the shadow, the stability and the structure of that shadow, you ain't gonna make no move. Every move is gonna be scary. Every move is gonna be made in lack. Every move is gonna be made scary. Every move is gonna be made through the same old aspect, the same old prudences. And then every time you start to, oh my God, it's a result, then you freeze up. But yeah, the first step is to really sit with yourself and be like, I need to sit with myself for a couple of days. I really need to take an assessment. I need to write some shit down. As long as you're assessing the steps before you make the move, that move will always be based on those steps. I wish somebody had told me that when I was younger. Actually, I'm glad no one told me that when I was younger. If somebody told me that when I was younger, I wouldn't learn what I know now. Did that answer your question? Hey. I know I'm thirsty as hell. Cool. Much gratitude. Thank you for coming through. I'm glad I could be of service. I'm glad I can be of service. I need to start putting the links to all my other stuff in there. But yes, I desire you to be the fucking best. Understand 3 things. Healing is destructive. You are deserving, but you are not entitled. And this level of honesty is going to kick your ass. It's going to kick your ass. Need it. You need this level of honesty because it's time to love and be intimate with yourself. It's time for you to grow. It's time for you to expand. It's time for you to become the best version of you. I can't do it for you. I can guide you. I can lead you to water, but I can't make you drink and all that good shit. Once again, I appreciate y'all for coming through. There's no more questions. If you have any questions about services, in the description of this lecture, there's a link to the services. I also got to put my links to TikTok. I got to put the links to my social medias there. I'll put the links in there for that. But I desire you to be the fucking best. I'm thirsty. I'm going to go grab a bottle of water. Y'all go grab a bottle of water too. And be fucking great. I love you. We love us. Ashe.